Listen up. There's no more excuses. We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, we've got friend Jay Williams in the house. For those of you that don't know, Jay is a former Royal Air Force IT geek, DJ, and now award-winning master coach, international speaker who fuses NLP, hypnotherapy, and other science-based modalities into a measurable, gamified method for creating a huge transformation change. Jay, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Likewise. So you and I got connected maybe a year ago on Facebook, and I had an opportunity to speak at one of your summits, one of your events. And whenever I see you in my news feed, you are just an abundance of joy and positivity. And so when we make these lists of guests, I love mindset. I love energy. I love people who can bring that to our show and bring that into our lives. And so naturally we said, great fit. So thanks for being here, and I'm excited for what we're going to learn today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's really kind of you, and it's interesting you say that because one of my core values is playfulness, and I know the E in hustle stands for enjoyment, if I recall correctly. And even though business can be very serious, and my topic can be very serious, I think it's important to find that nice balance, and playfulness is something that's really important to me. So I'm glad that's coming across in my newsfeed and in everything I do as well. So thanks.
Love it. Well, you got to have more energy and more positivity in your newsfeed. There's plenty of things in the world today that can bring you down. And so I always appreciate it when people can bring that. Jay, I want to know, tell me about your story. How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so for me, it really started just under 10 years ago now. I was actually on my way out of the Air Force. And on my way out of the Air Force, I was presented with this idea of the safe path, which is stay in on the Air Force, get 22 years, get the promotions, do the thing that feels comfortable. Or this other side of me, this part of me that was really pulling my heart, which was to go out there and do something that I love to do, which at the time was to become a professional DJ. And at the time, I was thinking to myself, hey, I'm going to jet off to Ibiza. I'm going to live the dream. I'm going to be a superstar DJ. And then along came a woman. And this woman came along, and at the same time, a friend of mine introduced me to affiliate marketing, high-ticket affiliate marketing. And my plan was literally go to Ibiza, live the dream, and figure the rest out when I come back, right? That was kind of it. And as I got to know this woman, I felt head over heels for this woman. And she somehow convinced me to stay in the UK. And for a long time, I justified that the reason I didn't do it is because I was in love. When the truth was, the real reason I didn't do it is because I was really terrified of realizing my full potential, who I was capable of really being. And I think most people can relate to this. You've had a dream, you've had something you really want to do, something you felt in your heart, but you've listened to your head. And staying in the UK, while it was a great decision in terms of my relationship, I still had this piece missing inside of me. And as I continued to pursue affiliate marketing, I really struggled to stay focused. I struggled to be consistent. I felt kind of disheartened by the business side. And I just felt this real misalignment for myself of what I was doing. I was just doing it because I actually, truth be told, I needed the money. But the problem was I wasn't making any money for the first 5.5 years. I tried multiple different businesses, but I just wasn't a very good finisher. I couldn't get myself to stay at something consistently. I'd always get to a certain level, and then I would give up or bounce to the next thing. And I spent a lot of time digging in and asking myself, like, why? Why does this keep happening? It's driving me nuts. And I just felt so frustrated that the same patterns kept on repeating themselves over and over again. And this took me on a path, a journey of reading self-help books, studying psychology, human behavior, walked on hot coals, broke boards, did every Tony Robbins program, did the Landmark Forum, did various leadership programs. And I was consistently trying to find the answer to whatever was going on within me. And it reached a point where my wife turned around and said to me, look, I love you. You are my absolute world. But I don't know how long I can stay with you if we keep going on like this. And that smacked me in the gut, in the face and in the heart as well. And at that point, I knew that it was time to grow up a little bit in business and I couldn't keep jumping round. And so I really started to look at well, what is it I really want to do? And at the time I could see these patterns of I enjoyed helping people. I'm quite extroverted. I'm looking at the DJ and looking at the patterns of where I felt most lit up, where I experienced joy and I felt like I was playing. And the patterns were there around helping people, solving people's problems and challenges, strategizing. And people would often say to me, Jay, you do these training videos all of the time in marketing. Maybe you should be a coach of some kind. But again, I could feel the calling to it, but I was resistant. My heart was kind of going, yeah, I do enjoy that stuff. And instead, my fears, they got in the way again. And I started to listen to my head. And I reached a point where I just didn't know what to do. I had all these fears of having to go back to a job and just thinking how much of a loser I'm going to feel if that happens. And it's then I came across this guy who gave me something completely different to what I'd never learned before about the mind and psychology and a way to shift things within me. And what he helped me to realize is that by reading all the books, doing all the studying, doing all the learning, even though we're always told, keep reading, keep investing, keep doing all of that sort of stuff, that was just my way of avoiding the real fears, the real doubts, the real stuff that was getting in the way. And to cut the long story short, he helped me to overcome them very quickly. And I was able to go from earning less than 20K a year in my business for the last first 5.5 years to doing things like 25K months and 37K months in my business. And I built out a 6-figure coaching business doing what I absolutely love, which is helping people solve their mental and emotional challenges that they experience day to day in business, just like the challenges that I had. And now I've helped over 1,500 to probably 2,000, I don't know the exact number, entrepreneurs all around the world to break through the blocks and the stuff that's holding them back so that they can become mentally and emotionally unstoppable in business.
So one of the things you referenced there was kind of that shift in your mindset, almost getting over the procrastination piece. And I think a lot of times I see a lot of people fall into this. They don't feel like they're procrastinating because, to your point, they're just always learning the next thing, but they're really procrastinating from the action they probably should be taking. And to your point, there could be a couple motivations to that, but certainly fear is oftentimes one of those. And so as you worked through this with other people, what are some of those common fears that you see that people have that they need to overcome to shift from that kind of busy procrastination to just getting the thing done?
Yeah, good question. So the thing that the biggest things that people fear are, number one, fear of failure, especially in people who are achievers of any kind. Fear of failure. Now, that can be a good thing in some respects because it motivates them, gets them to take more action, which can then lead to things like, hey, I don't have any work-life balance. I'm working all of the time, but they might not be aware of that. But fear of failure stops people from getting started. Another thing I see is fear of rejection, fear of not being liked, fear of not being good enough, which is really the root of most of these, or pretty much all of these fears. Fear of being judged. For the world of business, as an example, in the world we live in, being online is important. And so quite often we're told that we need to do more videos, we need to go and speak on stages, we need to do all this sort of stuff. And those are some of the biggest fears. And fear of judgment is one that just kills so many people because we all want to be loved, we all want to fit in, but unfortunately if you're going to build an online business, if you're going to generate sales, you're going to come across a few no's. You're going to come across a few people that don't actually like you, and people don't always see it this way, but that's actually a good thing in business. I remember one of my favorite quotes was, love me or hate me, there's no money in the middle. And so
I like it.
If you can't get people to hate you, you're not going to make a lot of money. That's the truth.
Yeah, it's a great point. So how have you seen people overcome those things? Because I feel like sometimes that is just so paralyzing, and I've experienced it, whether it be myself and even with others. You don't necessarily diagnose it that way initially,
No.
because you're obviously not doing it necessarily even consciously.
Yeah.
You're doing it unconsciously. So how have you found ways? I know you've done a lot of different with kind of brain training and breaking down kind of mental barriers and things like that. How do you even get to that kind of self-diagnosis piece of, I am like, that's why I'm not doing it, and just get going?
Honest answer, it's really bloody hard for people.
There you go.
And I'll tell you why. It's really hard because you're in it, right? And I remember a great quote from Les Brown. He said, it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. Do you ever notice that you can see what other people are doing wrong, but it's very hard to see what you're doing wrong? And the reason for that is because we have a number of biases built into our psychology. So, for example, we have a confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is we'll look for evidence in our environment to reaffirm what we already believe about ourselves and about the world. My dad, he's I'll call it football for my purpose of the American listeners, soccer. He's an insane football fan. And you know, when the team loses, whose fault is it? It's the referee. It's it's someone else. Like, it's nothing to do with his team. And I'm like, Dad, but you know, he was offside. He wasn't offside. He was onside, and we just weren't good enough. No. And he just defends that belief system that he has, that his team is right. And so whenever we are in it, it's very hard to actually see it because we have these biases built in. We also have an ego, and the ego hates looking bad. It hates to actually experience inadequacy, because the truth is, a lot of us have a lot of pain. We've all had pain in our life of some kind, whether that was a rejection from a girl or a guy, whether that was in a business which didn't work out, whether that was you went for a job interview or something. We've all experienced some level of pain or rejection, or when it just didn't work out. And so what happens is the mind doesn't want to go there, because it also has what's called the positive bias. And Warren Buffett once said something really smart. He said, optimism is the enemy of the intelligent investor. And I remember when I first got into business, and this is, I'm quite outrageous sometimes, and I get quite excited. And it was particularly true when I got in business, and this guy showed me how he was closing these like thousands of pounds worth of commissions just in a weekend. And he just put some ads on Facebook. I was blown away. I seen that and I went, I'm going to be a millionaire in a year. And I told all my family, told all my friends. I never generated a lead in my life, never built a business of any kind. And I have no idea how hard it would be. The truth is, I also didn't go to Google and search, how hard is it to build a business? How many businesses failed? Because I had this bias that was keeping me very optimistic about the chances of this being successful. And the important thing in this to understand is that the first step is we must get clear on what are the conscious and unconscious blocks that are holding us back. Now, conscious being the things that you're aware of, you're hearing my voice right now and you're aware of it. Unconscious is the 93 to 95% of the behaviors and activities that you're doing all day, every day, your heart's beating, you're breathing, that you're not aware of. So we have to bring those to the surface. And the way you do that is through strategic questioning. That's how we do it, so that we can get clear. So I'll give you a really simple example. I coached a guy last week at one of my live summits, my Mentor Me Live Summit. And this guy had worked, I didn't know it at the time, but he he worked with over 200,000 gyms. It was just insane. And he came on and I said to him, okay, what's the thing you want to overcome? He said, fear of failure. I said, okay, so what happens if you fail? And he's like, well, I'll lose my money. I said, and what happens if you lose your money? He's like, I'll end up broke. I said, and what happens if you end up broke? He said, I'll be a disappointment to my kids.
What's up, listeners? It's your co-host, Chris here. And I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of the Hustle Nation. We really appreciate all of you for listening, downloading, and reviewing the show. We know our listeners are all about achieving their dreams and big success. But if you've ever felt like you're just inches away from your dreams, like just something's missing, well, we've launched a new product called the Hustle Planner. It's not just a planner, it's your personal roadmap to success. The Hustle Planner was designed to help you break free from unfulfilled dreams. It's not just about listing tasks, it's like sculpting your future on paper, setting bold goals, tracking progress, and yeah, even finding a bit of daily joy. The Hustle Planner was designed to eliminate the burden of stress and anxiety, to give you a direction to better understand yourself, what's working and what's not. It was really designed for people like you and me to help stack victories on a daily basis. And if you win each day, you win the week. And when you win the weeks, you win the month. And if you can stack that kind of success month over month, quarter over quarter, you will then win the year. And we know when you do that, you will start building the momentum and success and confidence you know you're capable of. So if you're looking for a small edge and you want to start building momentum now, head over to Amazon or click the link in the show notes below. And for a small investment and a small commitment, you can make a huge impact in your personal and professional life.
So while the thing presents itself as fear of failure, this is very surface. The mind keeps you there because it doesn't want to go there. And this is where people can get their first breakthrough. Because the more specific you are, the more clear you are. See, when you're not specific, you often feel uncertain around it. And when we're in that realm of uncertainty, we can't fix a problem that we don't know is the problem. We feel uncertain about it. So we get emotional about it and we try to fix it. And the more we try, the more frustrated we get, the more we can't figure out the problem. And so when we get specific about it, we get to a place of certainty. And as soon as you identify what is the block, you always see a smile on people's face. And what normally happens is they laugh because they realize this is ridiculous. And so for some people, just identifying it is enough to help them shift it. Their neurology will do the heavy lifting for them. However, for many people, they have these biases built in, which is stopping them seeing the other side. So we live in a world where we're governed by universal laws. And one of those laws is the universal law of polarity. So there's always an up, there's always a down, front and a back, a left and a right, man and a woman or something in between. I don't know what we're talking about these days. An east and a west, a benefit and a drawback. There's always opposing poles. The problem is that we all have perspectives or beliefs, if you want to call them that are stopping us from seeing the other side. And when I was coaching this individual and we got to the real fear, I asked him the question. I said, first of all, I know you have a number of reasons why this is bad for your children to think ill of you or to be ashamed of you, whatever it is. And he said, yeah, I have loads of them, Jay. I said, I'm not going to ask about them. I want to know what's the benefit to you and your kids of this happening? And he's like, what? There's no benefit. I said, did we just agree that there's front and back, east and west, north and south? Like there's always opposing poles. He's like, yeah. So if you're seeing all of the drawbacks, there must be benefits, right? He's like, yeah, but. And I said, whenever you say but, it cancels out everything you said before it. So let's stay with me here. And I asked him again, what are some of the benefits? What's some of the benefits to your son of you being homeless, him like thinking ill of you? It's like, maybe he'll step up finally and grow up a little bit. And I went, that feels pretty good. What's the benefit of that? He's like, well, he'll actually become a mature man. I said, and what's the benefit of that? Well, he'll go on to lead a successful life. I said, and what's the benefit of that? He said, well, I'll be super proud of him. I'm like, awesome. Sounds pretty good to me. I said, what are the other benefits? And I drilled him. And most people stay at the surface level. And as I said, it's hard to get down into it. And I drilled him. And we took him from, we score people at the beginning from like a 8 or a 9 to like a 1 or a 2 fear of failure.
Yeah.
I said, how'd you feel? He's like, you just did some kind of magic on me or something. Because that's what happens, right? When you practice something in private for years or you have enough experience, people describe it as magic or art, but really there's a sequence and a process to it. And it's no different in human behavior and psychology as it is to building a successful business.
Jay, I really enjoyed that story. And one thing I heard you say over and over and over again was I asked the question. I asked this question. I kept going. To me, and I've been on some calls like that where I've seen other people have this self-discovery moment and they laugh because it's like, I should know that. Like, how do I not know that? How did I not realize that? But it sounds to me like you're helping people get to that moment by asking questions. Is that something that people can do themselves, or does it take a coaching session from a professional like you to get there?
I want to say that people can self-coach. And I think a very small group of people can, but I think it has its limitations. So, for example, I have a coach. I've had coaches for the last 10 years. And the reason I have that is because I want to pay for speed. What tends to happen is people sit in their stuckness, sit in their frustration, sit with problems for too long. And while I'd encourage people to try it out for yourself, and I think probably your audience is that type of audience anyway, that are going to try and figure it out on their own first. I think that you've got to ask, what's the cost of continuing to bang your head against the wall? What could you be doing with this time and energy that you're putting into trying to figure this out? And so I'll give you an example of this. I got asked to come to a mastermind in Florida. Beautiful place, Sunshine State. I love it. Beautiful Florida. And it was this huge mansion with had a bowling alley and a spa and tennis courts on a golf course. It just unbelievable place. And I remember going to this mastermind, and on the third day, my coach at the time made an offer for a program, and it was $36,000. And I'd gone to the mastermind going, no, I didn't come here for this. I just came here for the mastermind. It sounds really good. I really want it. But then what happened, a bit like when I met my now wife, which I have a daughter with, I started to try and justify it in my head. Oh, it's because I was in love, right, with my wife. But in this example, it's like, oh, no, it's not for me. It's not the right stage of business. It's not the right time. Oh, but I haven't done that. And I went round and people were asking me, hey, are you joining? And I'd go, no. And I'd tell them the same reasons, justifications and stories that I was telling myself. And they'd go, yeah, I agree. It's the same for me. Yeah. And that night, my coach comes up to me and he goes, so what's the objection? And I turned around to him and I said, don't push me. Because if you try and push me, there's a door there. I'm either going to walk out of that or I'm going to punch you in the face.
Wow.
And his wife comes and stands next to him. And then a few more attendees, and he turns around and really coolly just goes, that's not an objection.
I love that.
And I said to you, I'm telling you, do not push me. Do not push me. And he goes, watch this. Jay's going to coach himself into the sale. So I said, give me 10 minutes. So I walk outside and I'm walking up and down this pool going, what is it, Jay? What's the fear? What's the fear? Because I knew it was fear. What's the fear? It's always fear why people don't buy. What's the fear? What's the fear? And what happens it's a good little tip for your listeners. If you're ever unsure of what it is, you will try asking it in a certain way. So if I just go, what's the fear? And that isn't giving you the answer, you need to demand it from your unconscious mind. So you need to go, come on, what's the fear? Change your tonality, change the way you're asking. And what happened was that still didn't work. So I changed my tonality again. I'm like, come on, what's the fear? Come on, what's the fear? And straight away, money came up for me. I don't have enough money. And the next question I asked myself is that really true? So I pulled up my phone, and the best way to shift any limiting belief is to actually get new evidence to reaffirm the opposite of what you think is true. And that's what I do with questions, right? I just help people to see it for themselves. And I look at my banks and I'm like, okay, yeah, I've got the money. It's not the money. It's not the money. And then I'm like, what is it? I'm walking up and down this pool, frantically breaking a sweat. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not doing the work. Not doing the work. And I don't want to invest in something that I'm probably not going to do, like all the other programs that I've invested in. I go, so what can I do about it? And me being the optimist, I went, I know. If I can get help with, I was doing a DM strategy at the time, like DMing people on Facebook and getting them booked on calls. If I can figure out how to get this DM strategy going, then I can make it work. And at the time, he had one of the best DM, I don't know, appointment setters in the world, in my opinion, on his team. And I went up to him, his name is John. I said, John, look, I need your help. I'm not buying the program unless you teach me how to consistently book people and you work with me. And I want you to hold me accountable, because accountability, I think, is important if you can't get yourself to do the thing. And he says, how much do you need? And I reeled it off. And then he turned around, he's like, okay, done. Are you in? I'm like, I'm in. I went there, I paid the $36K, I was in the program. The following months, I did my biggest month ever, $37K, and then continued to go on to have consistent months, 25, $30K months from there. And that's the power of being able to coach yourself. But very few people have the awareness, for one, and two, the persistence to try and find an answer, because who wants to pay $36K?
Right.
That is painful for a lot of people. And so that creates a lot of emotion, and that's ultimately what gets in the way. So if I was giving anyone ever advice, I'd say, if you want speed, go and hire a coach.
So to follow up on that, one of the things that you hit on was the accountability piece, which Chris and I have actually been having conversations around this in the last couple of weeks. And, there's this balance of, for both Chris and I and many, many other people we've talked to, there's almost like two camps. There's those that will pay for accountability and those that won't. And so to your point, from my standpoint, I same thing. I also have a coach. And it's for those reasons, right? It's for someone to see outside of my forest, right? To call me out and say, look, this is what reality is or isn't. But there is also, I actually refer to him as kind of like my mini board of directors, right? Where he's holding me accountable, right? And I have to explain myself to him every month. And, kind of like what you said, it's not necessarily that he always gives me the answer, but he's asking me questions that are allowing me to get out of my own head. And so I'm just curious, as you've kind of gone down this path, that like you were willing to do it in some ways, like because you wanted to be held accountable. And yet there's a lot of people that's what shies them away. Do you have any insight as to maybe what kind of creates that distinction or what drives that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I've always created accountability for myself, because I understand how motivation works, and human beings were motivated to move away from pain and towards pleasure. And I think the challenge, especially in business owners and entrepreneurs, or anyone who just values freedom and autonomy and flexibility, is that we make the freaking rules, right? And so if it doesn't get done, it's kind of like, So I've always found that within myself that I need that structure in order to get myself to do the work consistently. That's not to say that I'm not motivated, because I am. I can get myself to do a lot of things. But like all human beings, we all have a threshold. We all have a limitation of what we're willing to do. And I could speak to both of you here and I could quickly find your limitation very quickly.
Yeah,
just by increasing the stakes. And why some people shy away from accountability is because they, just in my opinion, they don't like the idea of the fact that they're actually going to have to do the work. And they don't like the idea. And then there's the other side of it where people are like, they still feel like they have a point to prove. And they feel like if I haven't done it on my own, then I haven't earned it in some way, or it needs to be that lone wolf nature. I actually had a client of mine and he reached out to me and he was going through my Unstoppable Entrepreneur program. And he said to me, Jay, I'm not where I want to be in the program. And I really don't know what's going on. And I asked him a few questions. I said, okay, are you committed? He said, yeah, I'm committed. I said, okay. Are you really committed? Yeah. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Every day for the next 2 weeks, for 30 minutes, we're going to get on the phone. First thing in the morning, we're going to get on the phone and we're going to set an intention for the day and outcomes that we're going to create, and you're going to do it. And then the next day, we're going to review what you've done, and then we're going to set a new intention, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And he turns around and he's like, oh, shit. That means I'm actually going to have to do the work. Huh. Some people don't do it because they actually don't. Some people don't have accountability because they don't actually want to do the work. And normally the reason for that is because there is some kind of fear, in my opinion. And so they want to stay in what's comfortable. And they want to say, oh, yeah, it's the weather. I didn't have the strategy. I didn't have the time. Oh, it's the program. Oh, it's this. That's the problem. So they want to blame other things. When the single biggest thing that made the biggest difference for me in my business was when that happened with my wife, I knew something had to change because at the time I wasn't taking full responsibility for my business. I was treating it like a hobby. I was what's called a one-trepreneur. I was wanting to create a bigger life for myself. I was wanting to build a business, but I wasn't willing to do what it takes. And when I shifted my mindset to a place of, I'm going to take full responsibility for my results, everything changed for me. Because most people, and some people might not like the sound of it, they're playing victim. They're playing victim to their results. They're playing victim to time. It's never time. It's just not a priority. They're playing victim to all of the external things around them, instead of taking a long, hard look at themselves and going, how did I create this? How am I contributing to create these results? Now, I'm not in any way saying that everything that happens in life is your fault, because, bad things happen to good people. What I am saying is, if you take this on as a way of being, a way of thinking, just as a principle, what would happen if I take responsibility? I'll give you a really solid example. How many people do some kind of outreach, send an ad, get someone as a lead in their business, start a conversation, let's say a conversation with someone, and then they have like a brief interaction and then they don't get anything. What do they typically do? They shy away from it. They go, on to the next thing, on to the next conversation, because most people only follow up like once, max twice. And I say to my clients, especially in the business realm, what would happen if you took full responsibility for your results, but also for the results of the prospects and the people you're trying to help? How would you show up differently? And what happens is, instead of following at once, you do everything you can to actually get that person to engage. I'll give you an example of this. One of my one-to-one clients, he does, 20 million a year in his business. And me and him, he just had a really busy schedule. He was acquiring new companies and there was lots going on in his world. And I was trying to get a hold of him and I couldn't get a hold of him. It was driving me nuts. And I kept on reaching out to him and nothing. And so there's something in NLP called the law of requisite variety. And it's basically the idea that the person with the biggest range of behaviors influences the system or influences the person. Think about a young child. If they want an ice cream, they say, can I have an ice cream? When you say no, they go, please, right? And they change their behavior and flex in their behavior until they ultimately get what they want. And this particular client, I knew his partner and I reached out to her. She couldn't get him to get on the phone with me. And I thought to myself, I tell you what could I do here? And the thing that came to mind was this guy likes to go for a walk first thing in the morning and he doesn't have any distractions. And so at first I was like, no, I can't ring him at this time in the morning. That's a bit uncomfortable. And I got a little bit scared. And then I thought, what would happen if I took full responsibility for his results? Because I know if I get him on the phone, there's something I can help him with. And I just started ringing him every morning for a week until like the 7th day, he finally answered. He's like, if it's not working, change your approach, right? And I'm like, wow, you've answered the phone. And that is an example what it means to take full responsibility for the results that you're creating in your life. So it doesn't matter whether I'm talking about your intimate relationship, whether I'm talking about your health, whether I'm talking about in your business. I have a saying, and it's not mine. I can't claim it. I picked it up from a program I was on. If it's to be, it's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to me. And that's not to say you have to do everything. I'm not saying that. However, if your life is not where you want it to be, you have to take a long, hard look at yourself and go, okay, what can I do to influence this right now? What can I do to influence this right away? And it's one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself. Or another one, what is possible? Because so many people are focusing on what's not possible, what you can't do. I don't have the time. I don't have the resources, the money. I just can't figure it out. They use that language versus, okay, this is happening right now. Get in touch with reality. I have 10 appointments on my calendar and I'm sick as hell, which I was yesterday. What could I do? What could I do? Oh, well, I could shorten that meeting. I could rearrange that one till next week and find a way. But until you get in touch with your reality and stop playing victim to your situation, people and circumstances, you will never be able to create the results that you ultimately want.
Jay, you said something about taking responsibility for your client. Excuse me. So to me, that's a bit of a mindset thing. If people come up with excuses like most of us will, well, I can't ring him at 7:30 during his morning walk. I couldn't do that. I don't want to interrupt him. But instead, you approach it with self-talk by saying things like, you know what, I have to do this. I must do this because my goal is to help him. The question I would ask someone who says no to that is, what is the worst that can happen if you do that and you're persistent and you take that approach? And feel free to answer that. But what is the worst that could happen when you take responsibility for your client because you want nothing more than to see them succeed?
Yeah, what is the worst that can happen? You get and the honest answer to that, Chris, is you get them amazing results. That's the worst that can happen.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was hoping you were going to say.
And it's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because here's one of the first things I do with any fear. Most people go, I'm scared of people judging me. I'm scared of it not working out. And I just go to them, what if that does happen? What are you going to do then? Because what happens is we get anxious about an event happening, but actually and we feel uncertain about it, but what happens if you play that over in your mind and then you formulate a plan for when that does happen? Not to say it will happen, but at least you're prepared for it. So now you've equipped your mind with the resources to know what to do should that ever happen. And most people don't do that. I remember there's a really good question on the Diary of a CEO in the book by Stephen Bartlett. If you don't know who he is, it's an incredible podcast, great book. And he asked a question that most people aren't willing to ask themselves. And that is, what's the reason this will fail? What's the reason this will fail? And when you ask the question, what's the reason this will fail? All of the things that you're probably fearing will come up, as in fear I'll run out of money, fear I'll have to go back and get a job, fear I'll have to do something specific. And if you ask yourself that question, okay, well, what if that happens? You can then plan for that. You can create a plan A, you can create a plan B. And then you create certainty within yourself to be able to make a decision. Because the challenge of most people, just in my opinion, we make over 50,000 decisions a day, consciously or unconsciously. But some decisions are harder to make than others, right? The way we make decisions is when we have the right amount of certainty. And one of my favorite sayings that I share with all my clients is clarity creates certainty. Clarity creates certainty.
Yeah.
If you are unsure or unclear on what your marketing message is, what your offer is, what the bloody plan is, create a plan. Get clarity on the plan. Get a coach, get a pen and paper, write it down, speak to a friend. Find a way to get clarity, because clarity will create certainty within you. And at least that's going to give you the certainty to be able to take a step. And then you can do the same again, and the same again, and the same again, over and over and over again, until you eventually, hopefully, get to where you want to be.
Jay, I think I already know the answer to this question, but I want to hear what you're going to say. And coming from a marketing background, I ask these questions a lot about clarity and vision. But how many people you work with, or how many people show up to your summits that don't have clarity? And I'm talking about crystal clear clarity and or a vision.
What do you think the percentage is?
If I had to take a guess, I mean, I'm going to say a lot of people claim, but when I ask the question, the response is this. And if you can see me, I am scanning the room. I'm looking at the walls. I'm thinking, I'm going to say it's somewhere between 80 to 90% do not.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. And this is not to say, like, here's the thing. So to be fair to people as well, and to have some empathy towards people. No, my approach is often referred to as hammer and hugs. Right. And so one of my clients once described me as, Jay, you like medicine. You taste terrible going down, but you're exactly what I need. I do have a heart though as well. So when you are trying to deal with life, when you're trying to deal with all of the roles in a business, like there's a lot going on. And especially when you are starting out, you just want to get into the let's make a load of money, or let's help people, or let's solve a problem. Like we get excited by it and we want to get into it. And so what often happens is people end up kicking the ball down the road and then they're scratching their heads going, how did I get here? I've got all of these problems, but I'm not clear on how to resolve them or what to do with them. And a part of that is because they never really took the time to get clear on their vision of what they were actually creating, and more importantly, why. Like, why are they doing this thing? For me, I chased the money for the first 5.5 years of business. I really did, right? But in my heart, I knew deep down that I needed to align myself to my deepest values and align to my heart. And when I started aligning to my heart and what was congruent with me, instead of doing what everybody else told me that I should do, then it's only then the money started to come. But for 5.5 years, I wasn't clear on my vision. So I have a lot of empathy for people that don't. I mean, what I'd say to that is that if you are overwhelmed right now, which is probably 98% of your audience,
Yep.
The fastest way to get out of overwhelm is one of two ways. You either what's called chunk up. You get clear on the big picture of where you're going. And the reason I say this is because most people are in the weeds. They're thinking, how do I get that person to engage in my comments? How do I get this video perfect? How do I get this person to do this thing? They're so in the weeds. And if you spend too much time in the weeds and all of the things that you need to do, I call it your stress list or your to-do list, as most people call it, that's in the weeds, and you're not connected to your vision, you'll feel overwhelmed. So the fastest way to do it is what's called chunk up. So you move up to, what's the outcome I'm trying to create? Why am I doing this? Now, the second way to get out of overwhelm is if you're chunked too high and you're just like, hey, I want financial freedom. Well, try creating financial freedom from that place without ever going into the details and formulating a plan. So if you're overwhelmed and you're too high, then you need to go deeper. You need to chunk into details and formulate a plan, get a strategy, and then start taking those steps. So I do have a little bit of empathy for people, and I think it's important that people get that. But the most important thing I'd probably say is that if you don't have a vision right now of where you want to go, you wouldn't get in a car and go to the destination of somewhere.
Exactly.
And the mind
and drive really fast.
Yeah. No, here's the last thing I'll say on this. The mind needs very specific instructions. If you set a goal and say, I want more money, well, the mind's going to give you like $1 or $1 or something, right? It's going to find a way to find $1 because we have something called reticular activating system. And what this does is it zones in to the things that can help you achieve what you want. So the more specific you are, the more likely your mind is going to highlight those things in your environment that can help you achieve that result. And so getting clear on your vision, not an easy thing to do. I struggled with it a lot, to be honest with you, because people would ask me, what do you want? What's your vision? I'd be like, I don't know. And if you say that to yourself, just ask yourself the question and do it in a playful tone. I know you don't know. And what if you did? What would you say? And I promise you something will come to mind.
One of the things that jumped out to me that I think is a huge nugget is that accountability of the results for yourself. From accountability to the results for yourself to accountability to the results of your business, and then transitioning that to accountability to the results of whether it be your clients or whatever relationships even you have around you, right? So I think that can expand to so many different relationships, different objectives people have in life. And to me that as I kind of listen through that, having that vision and then finding that accountability and holding yourself accountable in some ways, maybe by pulling somebody from the outside, is really what can make the difference.
So the thing that's going to make the difference is getting someone to help you. And what I'd say is it all depends on what you want to achieve. If you want to go fast, hire people who can help you go fast. If you want to lone wolf it, the road is long, the road is hard. That's not to say you can't achieve it. But what's the saying? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go together, if you want to go far, go together. And I'm in the business of going far. And yes, I absolutely want to go fast, and my clients want to go fast. That is absolutely true. But if you find the balance and hire the right people, then you can go far, and you can do that at an accelerated speed, just in my opinion.
Excellent.
Jay, I want to go back to something a moment ago when you were talking about being overwhelmed. I think that even the highest performers in the world, in the lower performers in the world, everybody in between gets overwhelmed at times. I think it comes down to two things, and maybe it's together, maybe it's separate. But you talked about strategy. Oftentimes in marketing, I come from a marketing background, I ask people how many people have a strategy, and it is often like 5%. Not kidding. But more importantly than that, there are people who have a strategy who still don't get shit done. Now, I would argue they need an implementation plan, which everybody needs. But some of it comes back to this, and this is part of our hustle framework, is I think a lot of us need to make it easy. And so one of my phrases and taglines I use in marketing, we use in hustle, is make it so easy it's fun again, so easy you'll have no excuses. Do you think that that's fair? Does that fit into a lot of what you do?
Yeah, well, the mind is programmed for the path of least resistance. And if you look at every big brand, they understand this. For example, Amazon. What did they introduce? One-click purchase. Why? Because they want to make it easy for you to buy. If you offered two people two different offerings, one is, hey, for 90 days, you're going to go to the gym every day and you're going to eat lettuce, versus here's a magic pill. Which one are they going to choose? It's going to be the magic pill. So the mind is programmed for the path of least resistance. And it's smart that you say that, because I think that if you can find ways to make it easier for you to do the work, to do the behavior, then you're more likely to build the habit. And as a result, you're going to get the result. Most people make it way too difficult for themselves.
Agreed.
They overcomplicate it. And so as a result, they never end up doing the work. For example, what happens every single year in January? New year, new me. The problem is it's a new year, but it's not a new you. You still have all the same beliefs, the exact same identity as you had 1 minute ago before midnight. So the challenge then is people go, I'm going to change my life this year. And they try and do too much too quickly when they've conditioned themselves to be a certain way for 20, 30, 40 years. And then they use willpower to try and change, and they make it really hard for themselves to succeed, and then they fail. And I think it's something like 80% have given up by the end of January. And if they were to actually instead say to themselves, okay, what are the things I need to change within me in order to create the types of results that I want right now? And let's just assume, for argument's sake, there are 12 things. Okay, what if I worked on one of these a month for 12 months? Or if let's say there were 6 things, I just worked on 6 things. I think in the book Atomic Habits, it says on average it takes about 66 days to form a habit. It's different depending on the habit. Some are easier to do than others. But if you were to do that, you'd be more likely to create a change because you've made it easier to win. Most people have crazy ideas of what success looks like for them, or what success should be. This is one of the reasons people never feel like they've had a successful day or a successful week, because they try and do too much. I'll tell you what my version of success, and everyone can ask themselves what their version of success is. My version of success, and I'm doing this on this podcast, my version of success quite simply is, my measure of success is if I help one person a day, I'm winning. If I help one person a day, I'm winning. Whereas if I had a measure of success, I need to make 3 million today. I'm not saying that's bad, and it depends on you. It's contextual. And you've never made 3 million before. Well, it's easy for you to feel like a failure. And so what I'd say to that is, make it easy for you to feel successful, and make it easy to actually be successful by eating an elephant one bite at a time.
Jay, that was a phenomenal way to wrap up this conversation. And I'm very grateful and appreciative of your time today, because we do talk a lot about leadership and mindset. But this was a whole new conversation to us, and a whole new path that not only I think added a lot of value for us, but will add a lot of value to our listeners. So thank you for being here. But before we let you go, tell us a little bit more about what you have going on and where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a number of summits coming up this year. I'm actually doing 9 summits this year. I've got the AI for Impact Summit coming up next month. And then I've got Clients on Demand and a number of AI summits throughout the year. So if you want to connect with me, you can visit my website, jwilliamscoaching.com, or you can go and follow me on Instagram, jwilliamscoaching, or you can find me on Facebook as well, Jay Williams Coaching. So you can find me there. And come along to one of my events. We put world-class speakers. We've had the number 1 marketer in the world, Neil Patel, speak on our stage. Chris has been on our stage, and we just had some amazing speakers. And people are truly blown away by our events. Someone actually said to me, Jay, how did you get all of these people, these top people, my question, at your summits? And it really comes down to how you lead yourself. And that's the honest to God truth. Because I had no right getting some of these speakers on a stage. but it really comes down to how you're leading yourself. And that helps you to be able to lead others and influence others in a way that, for me personally, allows me to add value to the world and make a difference.
And I could vouch firsthand. I've attended, there are some really phenomenal speakers and some that I've even connected with. There you go, folks. I think that you got to go out there and check it out. Jay posts some awesome videos and great content on social media. Check him out. For all of you listening today, for your downloads, thank you so much. We appreciate your ears. Until next time, peace.
Thank you for being part of the Hustle Nation. If you're serious about raising the bar in your personal and professional life and willing to go all in on your success, head over to hustleleaders.com. Here you can get access to our Hustle Productivity ebook, attend our Hustle Masterclass, or challenge yourself to the 30-day Hustle Challenge. Pairing these tools and training with the Hustle Nation podcast will help you advance to a whole new level. Until next time, stay hungry and inspire those around you to hustle.